The apocalyptic but occult book of Enoch and the fallen angels, what we call the Nephilim, the Genesis giants. Enoch is considered to be the seventh after Adam, the patriarch Adam of the Jews who lived in the years before the flood, father of Methuselah, grandfather of Lamech, and great-grandfather of Noah. He is considered by the Christian tradition as one of the two prophets, the other being Elijah, who did not die but were taken up alive into the heavens. It's believed that both will return to earth in the years of the Antichrist as mentioned in the Apocalypse of John, and will be the last witnesses of the faith before the second coming, according to Revelation 1:12. However, many question the historicity of the person of Enoch, accepting that this is a collective title of a class of people, spiritually evolved, who taught the rest of the sciences and arts as accepted by the theosophical system of Blavatsky. The same circle believes that collectively they are the names of Prometheus, Orpheus, the god of Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, Edris of the Muslims, and other persons mentioned in mythology. The prophet Enoch is credited with writing a text which contains prophecies about the coming of the Messiah, about the end of the world, speaks of the fall of the angels, and gives detailed descriptions of hell and heaven, and movements of the planets and weather phenomena, and much more. This book, the teachings of which are believed to have been transmitted through oral tradition, is not included in the books of the Old Testament, and is considered an apocryphal text, although it may have greatly influenced not only the Jewish Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, but even the Bible itself. The revelation of the Apostle John, the Apocalypse, that is, of John, and the letters of the Apostles. The fathers of the early church. The early church fathers were strongly influenced by it and praised it, such as Saint Irenaeus, Saint Justin the Martyr, Saint Clement of Alexandria, Athenagoras, the Apostle Peter, and the Jewish historian Josephus. Nevertheless, none of them agreed with the account of the fall of the angels, as we'll see below. In fact, the fact is, however, that it's not considered a heretical book. It's not heretical, even if it's not included in the Old Testament. According to scholars, it's most likely that it was written in the Hebrew language during the years of the Babylonian captivity. And this is because many descriptions of it, like the Ancient of Days, resemble corresponding descriptions of the prophet Daniel. It's certain that it underwent variations during its copying, and while it was well known in early Christian times, its traces disappear around the end of the 8th to the beginning of the 9th century AD. The English travelers Bruce and Ruppel found a copy of it in Abyssinia, written in the Coptic language, and in 1811 it was translated into English by Bishop Lawrence and then into other languages. As mentioned above, the point that provoked reactions was the narration of the fall of the angels. The Christian tradition considers that an angel, Lucifer, probably the highest in the angelic hierarchy until then, because of his arrogance that made him want to be above God, apostatized, and the angels were divided into 2 factions. Those who followed him and those who responded to the call of Archangel Michael, stand well, stand after fear. This is what we always say in the Christian Orthodox Holy Liturgy after the creed is recited. The first, together with their leader, fell forever, that is, Lucifer fell forever with his minions from the hierarchy of light and turned into the dark demons who have since been plotting the divine work. At this point of view, many traditions have been created by the Roman Catholic and also the Christian Orthodox churches. The Book of Enoch has a different view of the divine work, and it happened when the sons of men multiplied in those days. Beautiful and good daughters were born to them, and the angels, sons of heaven, saw them and said to one another, "Let us choose ourselves women from among the men, and let us bear children ourselves." And Semiazas, the chief among them, said to them, "I am afraid you will not want to do this thing, and I myself will be debtor of a great sin." Everyone responded to this, "Let us all swear the same oath, and curse each other not to turn away from this until we fulfill it and do this thing. Then they all shouldered together and accused each other of it. And they themselves received a wife, each of them chose a wife for themselves, and they came in to them and dwelt among them, and they taught them pharmacy and children and rhizotomy, and they taught them herbs, and in their stomachs they became great giants of 3,000 feet, who endured the labors of men. And when these people were unable to help them, the giants rushed upon them and hunted the people, and came to sin among the roosters and beasts and reptiles and the fish, and devoured each other's flesh and drank the blood. Then the earth prospered against the lawless. The evil where the giants sowed the earth. The narrative goes on to detail the arts the angels taught the women, and the evil the giants sowed on earth until the fourth strongest angels, Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel. Raphael is not mentioned here. We know him, the Archangel Raphael, from the book of Tobit of the Old Testament. Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel cast their gaze upon the earth and saw what had happened, so they informed God. God decreed that the fallen should be cast into the depths of the abyss forever, and the giants should perish by their own hands, and that the sinful race of men should perish in the flood. The fallen ones begot Enoch, begged Enoch to intercede for them with God, but he answered them that angels intercede for men and not the other way around. Continuing the text mentions the extremely interesting that the giants will give birth to wicked spirits that will be called spirits of evil. They will not eat, they will not drink, they will be invisible and responsible for every calamity of people. There have been various attempts to interpret the above narration, which is also the most heretical point of the book. First of all, it should be pointed out that such a text can be allegorical, and its real interpretation is based on keys, quote unquote, without the knowledge of which it is not possible to interpret. I will rely on what is described verbatim. Sons of God procreated with lower women. It's claimed by some that the translation of the word Elohim is wrong because it's not only translated as angels, as in Enoch, but also as sons of God or virtuous men. Therefore, sons of God, virtuous people, procreated with inferior women, and that is why they sinned and not the angels of God. The truth is that the Hebrew word Elohim is a plural number, and it means gods or powers, and the phrase B'nai Elohim means sons of gods, as it is also mentioned in Genesis in the disputed phrase, quote, and seeing his sons, God, the daughters of men, end quote, Genesis 6:2. The explanation of this points to the translation assert that the sons of God are the descendants of the pious generation of Seth from Enos, and the daughters of men are the descendants of the generation of Cain, the which is characterized as corrupt. One of Tassili's most famous works shows what appears to be some kind of vehicle with a rope pulling a group of women who appeared to be kidnapped victims. The sons of God took the daughters of men, Genesis 6:2. There were 200 who came down in the years of Jared. In the text of Enoch, however, it's mentioned there were 200 who went down in the years of Jared to the top of Mount Hermon. So if they were humans, from what higher point did they apparently descend the mountain? To get down somewhere, one has to be higher, and what is higher than the mountain? This, together with the interpretation based on the sons of God as descendants of Seth, strongly reminds us of the apocryphal pseudographed book of Adam and Eve, where it stated that the proto-created cast out of paradise lived on top of the towering mountain, and after the murder of Abel, the descendants of Cain lived at the foot of the mountain, and the pious of the top of the mountain were forbidden to descend and mingle with their single relatives at the foot of the mountain. But even if we accept this as an explanation, the text speaks of, quote, descendants of Aradis, end quote. So we do not accept that the pious of the summit descended to the abomination but some higher up the mountain. The interpretation of the word as men, however, does not account for the products of this union, namely the giants or Nephilim, as referred to in the text. If they were human, why did their reproduction lead to the birth of giants, who are also mentioned in Genesis? And the giants were upon the earth in those days. And with that, as if the sons of God entered into the daughters of men and gave birth themselves, they were the ancient giants, the famous people, Genesis 6:4, while in Numbers 33:13, he mentions that they were the sons of Anak, the Nephilim, the huge giants of Anak, in the land of Canaan, the promised land, and hints that in the end, the flood did not destroy them all, but at least some survived in the area of Palestine. Born under spirit and flesh. Another argument of those who accept the version of the wrong translation is based on Genesis, where God says, "Do not let my spirit remain in these people forever because they are flesh," Genesis 6:3. If we examine the text, however, we find that the word men, quote unquote, may refer to the giants and not to their progenitors, the fallen or the erigorous, the abominable, the Nephilim. The meaning does not change if we consider this, and it agrees with the book of Enoch that, quote, "born under spirits and flesh, in the earth their dwelling is," end quote. Therefore, I consider that even this argument expressed by St. Augustine does not exclude the correctness of Enoch's texts. The most central, however, the argument of the book's critics is that, according to them, angels are not possible as spirits to procreate. We will stand here longer. In the Gospel according to Matthew, Christ mentions that, quote, "since he is resurrected, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but you are God's angels in heaven," end quote. Based on this, the critics of the book claim that Christ himself has given a definitive answer to those theories. Again, however, the God-man could mean not the angels as a whole, but those who chose not to be enraged, the righteous angels who responded to the call of Archangel Michael and remained in heaven. It does not make it clear in any way whether angels have the ability to create life or not. Angels are supposed to be genderless spirits, at least in the Orthodox tradition, who are necessarily depicted in young male form in iconography. They don't have beards, that is, just like demons. However, the latter have been accused of atrocities against living men and women in the form of incubi and succubi. I don't know if there has been a reported case of childbearing, but there are many cases of sexual contact. The Holy Inquisition accused witches of immoral acts with demons. Saints of the Church reported that they were tormented by demons. Procreation by gods, goddesses in a common tradition throughout the world, and the innocent conception of Christ and others was done with the mediation of the spirit of a spirit. It's assumed that the Antichrist of the Christian tradition will be produced of such an unlawful conception. Something which usually escapes the attention of all who have dealt with the subject we're discussing is the attitude of the daughters of men. Why did they accept without fear, to say the least, contact with spiritual entities that were apparently completely different from themselves? In all nature, the female must feel an attraction to the male, who may be handsome or ugly, however similar to the members of his species, if one excludes at least the perversions. So could the egregious, that is, the abominable Nephilim, have deceived the women appearing in human form. In other words, of course, they were shapeshifters. And I just want to put my comment in here. Let's remember that's what the Apostle Paul teaches in the New Testament, that we have to be alert on the way the evil ones use their wiles, their machinations to trap us and to tempt us. That the evil one, Satan, even appeared to Eve as the form of an angel of light of God. And she was so enticed by him that she listened to him. So angels can take the human form when they want to, so logically they should appear before them as humans. Whether they declared their identity, we don't know, but perhaps they did. Otherwise, God would have no reason to be angry with the women, since they fell victim to fraud. But the God of the Old Testament has so many human flaws that no one can be sure how he would react. Now, I don't agree with that. God is always knows what he's doing. Now, Eve's deception by the evil one, by the snake, by the reptile. Christian conceptions seem to place the fall of angels in pre-human times before the creation of Adam. Genesis states that the evil one, the snake, the deception of Eve occurred in paradise, so the fall must have occurred earlier. But Enoch tells us that it was in the years of Jared that the Grigoruns, the Nephilim, came down to Mount Hermon, that is, in times when men were already living on earth, expelled from paradise for many generations, at least 6 in number. And if indeed the apple symbolizes the knowledge which a spirit has never to reveal to men, the one might suppose that the writer of Genesis had in view the account of Enoch, though he or some others took care to censor and cover it behind a symbolism. Lamech, grandson of Noah, married, and when his wife gave birth to a child, terror seized his soul. The child's flesh was white as snow, and pink as a rose, and his hair was also white. As soon as he opened his eyes, a room was lit up, and as soon as he opened his mouth, he began to praise God. The child of an angel he was. Now Lamech, fearing that the child was not his but an angel's, sent his father Methuselah to Enoch, who already dwelt with the angels, to consult him. Enoch assured him that he was his own child, told him of the fall of the whirling angels, and prophesied that Noah would survive the flood, which would destroy men and the products of one-way unions with fallen ones. At first, the image of Noah resembles albinism, a disease in which no melanin is produced in the body. No albino, however, can speak from the moment of birth. In Lamech's question, it seems that the belief in the reproductive abilities of angels was common and could not have been influenced by Enoch, since the latter only then revealed to Methuselah the fall of the abominable Nephilim and the coming deluge. Creation of the white race. Could Noah's description be a symbolic reference to the creation of the white race? Unfortunately, there's no confirmed evidence for such a great antiquity of the Jews, nor are there any references for the appearance of Noah's sons. Here, as in the story of the flood, the possibility of the influence of the copyists or even the authors from their earlier sources appears perhaps more strongly than ever. Enoch was already living with the angels in a place far away but accessible from Methuselah. Where this place might have been, no one knows. Are the opinions of all those who claim that they were not angels but intelligent beings from other planets who mingled with mortals descending from their flying vehicles and because of the difference in genetic material, gave birth to giants? I leave it up to you. The church introduces a new doctrine. The book of Enoch was presented quite abbreviated and with more weight on the fall of angels and less on the birth of Noah. Of course, the text does not only include these events, but also descriptions of other spheres of existence, interpretations of celestial phenomena, the name of the lords, quote-unquote, of the heavenly bodies or angels of power, as they are typically mentioned. These passages contain many difficult points and are good ground for study. The exclusion of the book from the Old Testament series is understandable, since what is described contradicts the traditions embraced by the Church in its attempt to introduce a new doctrine free from old understandings of similar doctrines. How far the Church has achieved this is a matter beyond the scope of this article. The God of Enoch is the typical God of the entire Old Testament. Harsh, punishing, unconvinced, majestic in the face of his omnipotence, unyielding in the face of forgiveness of the fallen, with suspicions of human emotions and mainly anger. Demons who torment people are not in Enoch the vigilantes. They are rather described as sad figures, in contrast with the Christian tradition, which considers them to be responsible for all evil. In Enoch, the spirits of the giants are the ones who cause the suffering, trapped in the lower material dimension from which they were born. knowledge is considered sinful. The concept of acquiring knowledge is also ambiguous. On the one hand, it's considered sinful, transmitted by fallen Nephilim, and on the other hand, Enoch offers plenty of it. That is to say, while he grants some astronomical and astrological knowledge, he reproaches Akiviel, Tamiel, and Asarabiel for teaching the same things to the daughters of men. The similarities with the story of the Titans, and especially with Prometheus, are obvious, and one wonders if all this technological civilization that we have developed, which can destroy as well as save, started from a melting pot, or if it's a gift from God. What God, who we accept to be the perfect being, would have flaws so vengeful, so human, that he would deprive his beloved creatures of the knowledge to improve their lives? So for this reason, the Book of Enoch, regardless of the correctness or otherwise of his narrative, like all of the Old Testament, lend themselves to fruitful reflections on religious theology and not only issues. And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.